Well, hey there, and welcome back to another episode of the Online Marketing and Media Podcast. My name is Milan, and as always, I hope you're having a fantastic week. Today's episode has been in the making for 2 months, so I am super excited to be able to hit that publish button and share it with you. Today, I'm interviewing my speaking coach, Heather Sager. And as many of you know, I hired Heather to help me level up my speaking and communications abilities here on the podcast. And friends, I think you're going to fall in love with this episode. It is so good. She delivers so much value. But before we dive in, I just want to mention 2 things really quick. Number 1, as many of you know, I've been having some issues with my microphone here. Sent it in during the spring only for repair, only to find out that it's completely fine. So when I was interviewing Heather, unfortunately, it was acting up again, and I ended up having to use the microphone from my computer. So unfortunately, my audio quality isn't as great, but she's doing most of the talking anyways, and the valuable information she gives on today's episode, I think, will make up for that. That being said, I do think I figured out the problem, which is a faulty extension cord. So hopefully we won't have this issue anymore. Other thing I wanted to mention is, as many of you know, I released a new free video training called the 7 Hacks to Becoming More Confident on Video. I've gotten so much positive feedback from it. So if you haven't seen it yet, and by the way, thank you for that. But if you haven't seen it yet, I want to highly encourage you to take a watch. Completely free. You can access it by going to milanmarketingandmedia.com/free training. Again, that's milanmarketingandmedia.com/free training. Okay, enough about that. Let's dive into today's episode, the 5 beliefs separating you from success with Heather Sager. Well, hey there, Heather. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. And I would love for you to introduce yourself to my listeners. But before we do, I just want to give a little bit of context to everyone that's listening right now. So I met Heather virtually through one of our sort of Facebook groups, Amy Porterfield's Facebook group. And I was looking to bring some more speakers onto my podcast because, I think it's really great to hear from other people and their experiences and the value that they can bring. But I'm super particular as to who I bring because I want them to have, value to my listeners, right? And so someone had recommended you in the Facebook group, and I listened to your podcast, episode number 39, 5 Beliefs Separating You from Success. And immediately I was like, okay, she's the real deal. I got to have her on the podcast. So of course, as you know, I reached out to you and, we were talking about you coming on. And then, I knew you were having your Speak Up to Level Up program that you were relaunching, and you had that webinar, and I said, you know what, I need to go on this webinar and learn a little bit more about Heather. So when we're talking, I can really relate to her. So I joined your webinar and something amazing happened. I came to a realization that I've really plateaued in my speaking capabilities and my communication style. And it was time to really take things to the next level. Now, I know I could do it myself. Confident, without a doubt. Thing is, it might take me 5 years. And here I have the fast lane, the highway of how to up-level my game. And I said immediately, it's time. I got to invest in this. And I think we've been speaking for 4 weeks now? And I have seen tremendous, tremendous results. I was aiming for 10% in month 1. I feel like I'm up to 30%. So I cannot wait to see where this takes me, your program. So I will stop rambling. I will pass the baton over to you. Can you introduce yourself and tell my listeners a little bit about you?
Oh, thank you so much, Milan. One hell of an intro there. It's been an absolute pleasure watching you grow within the program. But also, let's just talk for a moment around the concept that we're all craving with marketing is the dream that you attract people who want to work with you and they just somehow decide to do business with you. And it's just a really beautiful thing that our relationship started with you just being a listener of the show, looking to have me come on, and you turned into be a customer, which is pretty incredible. So thinking about that. So a formal introduction, as you asked. So I'm Heather Sager. I'm a virtual speaking coach for entrepreneurs, where I help business owners articulate what it is that they do and how to speak at their audience in a way that captivates them, educates them, gets them excited about working with them. The idea of speaking, most people think about speaking as being a motivational speaker, leading a conference, or speaking from a stage. And while I think all those things are important, and I do that in my business, what I've learned in my career is the skill of speaking is something that creates influence, it creates buy-in, and it helps you continue to level up regardless of what your business goals are. So what I like to think about is I teach people how to do a fundamental skill that they can use in their marketing, they can use in their team development, they can use in all these different areas of their business to continue to level up and show up in a way that connects with their ideal audience as authentically them.
You have so much valuable information in today's topic. I want to just dive right into it. Can you talk about where you came up with these 5 beliefs that we're going to talk about today?
Yeah. Let's first talk about this idea. When you come to a marketing podcast or you come to a business podcast and you hear people talking about beliefs, there's a little bit of a moment where you roll your eyes a bit and say, okay, how do I get to the tactical how-to stuff? That's why we're here, the strategies and tactics to help us get more customers or patients in the door. And this is exactly why so many of my clients come to me, is they're like, how do I get on video? Or how do I get more leads? Or how do I book a podcast? Or they want the how-to. And when I start working with some, what I find pretty quickly is there are some mental shifts we have to make in order for us to show up in a way that gets people wanting what we have to offer, gets people wanting to hear from us. I use the word influence a lot. Influence is this idea that you can allow people to be excited about what you have to share in your message. And if you don't have the beliefs, what we're going to talk about today, if you don't have these in place, it's pretty difficult to get people to want to follow you deeper than just, I don't know, following you on Facebook. You want to create not just people who are interested in your business. You want to attract people who are excited about working with you. So there are some shifts we have to make sure that you put into place so that you show up in a way that allows for this level of influence. So jumping straight into it, how about I hit on belief number 1, because I think that'll help illustrate this. And belief number 1 that you have to adopt is you have to believe that what you say matters. You have to believe that what you say matters means that you not only believe in the content, you believe that what you have to provide for someone in a video or in a consultation or wherever it is that you're speaking, it could just be a conversation with one of your employees. You have to believe that what you have to say has substance and it's meaningful and it matters. And it's not just a informational marketing video. It's actually something that's going to be the start of a meaningful change in someone's life. You have to believe your content more than anyone. Otherwise, why would anyone else? So you have to understand that your content, regardless if you're teaching something as simple, I know of a business owner who teaches people online how to make the perfect caramel apple, but she believes that that's a really, really important thing. She believes in it. And there's this whole content she has around it. She has a digital course for it. Like, I don't care what you teach. You have to believe that it actually matters and it's something that's important to you.
I totally agree with that. I mean, how can we expect other people to believe in our message when we don't believe in it in ourselves? You know, interesting thing with social media, though, I think it's, on social media, it feels like you're talking to a stranger sometimes. Why is it so difficult to come off as if we really believe in our message on social media?
I think a lot of times we treat social media as a checkbox where some marketer trainer tells us, oh, you got to be on video, you got to be on social media. And it's I don't necessarily know how I should do it. I don't know exactly what I should be saying. And a lot of times people have a hard time modeling how their message or their industry translates from a lot of marketing trainers that are in other industries. So they're left with this I'm not quite sure what to do. So it's a check the box. Oh, okay, I'm supposed to go online and introduce myself. And so you do a post about yourself and it's like, check, that's done. And then it's like, okay, now I need to do a a post around behind the scenes. Okay, check. I did that. And when it becomes more of this laundry list of things that we're quote unquote supposed to do or should do, what happens is we start losing the meaning in the message. I think a lot of times we discount the fact that we're really smart people. I mean, you run a business, for God's sake. Like, you run a business, you're smart, you've gotten here for a purpose. Use your brain. Use this idea around when you think about the message, when you think about how you want to talk to another person, actually think about that and say, would I want to read that? Would that be helpful for me? Is this actually what I want to say? Or am I creating a shell of a statement because I think I think I'm supposed to? So I think if we start looking at our messages and saying, is this meaningful? Does this matter? Not from the standpoint of every message has to be this big, powerful, life-changing thing. It just has to be valuable in the moment. Like, if you start looking at your material, looking at your content with the lens of, do I stand behind this? Do I feel good about this? You start shifting from the recipe or the checklist into meaningful content to build relationships.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know how you feel about this, but I think video in particular, I mean, it's really easy to see when someone is not truly believing in what they're saying on video. I mean, the camera does not lie, as you know. So that just makes it even more challenging.
Yeah. And the camera can be deceptive, right? Because this idea that even if you really believe in what you have to say, if you don't show up in a way that exudes your self-confidence, if you don't come up in a way that exudes that you're really excited and they should be too, the camera, I want you to consider, is like, filtered glass, or like frosted glass, how you can see through it a bit, but you can't quite make out the details. We put them in our bathrooms for that specific reason. I want you to think about a camera as like frosted glass, where you have to work harder to get your energy across. You have to work more on your voice, your facial expressions. You have to really bring your energy level up in order for that frosted glass not to dampen how you come across. You need to be a little bit more vibrant, more energy, more vibrancy than you would normally, because the camera is going to dampen it.
I'm really glad you brought that point up, because my journey with video started about 4 years ago, and I hired this videographer, John D'Amato, amazing photographer. And now he's really focusing, he's focusing on speakers. He's part of the National Speaker
Association? Yeah, NSA, very popular.
Yes, yes. And so you probably know a lot of the clients he's worked with. But anyways, back then he was helping me a lot with video, and that's exactly one of the techniques he taught me. He was working. He used to work with Maury. Maury, I can't remember his last name, but you know the
Povitz?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And
I think that sounds right. I'm like, I don't know if I'm missing a syllable there, but we know what you're talking about.
Exactly, close enough, close enough. So, anyways, he used to work with him, and he said, "Milan, you have to like pump your energy up a little bit, because the camera is dampening it down." Exactly what you said. And it took me a little time to sort of balance that, because sometimes I was just like, woo, too up in the air, like I was on a coffee high or something. And it's a real art to be able to balance between being a little too peppy and not enough,
Yeah.
So.
Yes. And let me give you let me go down a little bit of I like to do side notes here and give a little things. An analogy that I like to use when you're thinking about how you communicate, this goes for camera, this goes for every single day when you talk to your spouse. What I want you to think about is, most of us communicate, imagine that you're walking through a tunnel, like a small tunnel. And you're closed in on this tunnel where you can't really stretch out and move, like you're suffocated. And when you think about this, when we use our hand gestures, when we use our voice, when we use our facial expressions, we usually keep everything in this tunnel. We're safe. It's all kind of not one note. I don't really think, a lot of people talk monotone, but I don't think many of us would call it monotone. But we use the same notes, the same gestures, the same facial expressions. And what happens is it gets boring and people don't want to listen. And your message gets lost, not because the message is bad. It's because the way you give the message, the way that you share the message is just not interesting for more than 30 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's terrible to say it, but come on, y'all know what I'm talking about. So, what I want you to think about is you have to consciously break out of that tunnel and start stretching your voice. You have to start stretching your facial expressions, your hand gestures. You have to think about stretching out your limbs a bit and trying some of those more vibrant, crazy things. Sometimes you're going to sound a little crazy. Sometimes you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that felt like I was talking really loud or really fast. And you watch it back and realize, oh my gosh, I was still in my tight little tunnel. So you have to try things. That's why I really encourage people to do vocal exercises or practice their hand gestures like a crazy person in the shower. Try all the things to start breaking out of your tunnel. And that way, when you do show up for a quote unquote performance or a video, you are stretched out a little bit more and you'll be more vibrant and more on the perimeter of your tunnel of your voice or your hand gestures and not so tightly wound.
That's a great analogy. I love that. So we have success or belief number one, which is believe that what you say matters. What is number two?
Yeah, this one is my absolute favorite. And I think the reason that allowed me to be so successful in my career, it's probably the hardest one to adopt though. You have to see yourself as a leader and an authority. So what I mean by that is obviously those listening, you're business owners, you know that naturally as a business owner that you're a leader. I want you to start thinking about this idea as leadership and having authority means that you have confidence in what you have to say, means that you see yourself as a thought leader, not just a business owner, but as a thought leader to your patients, your customers, a thought leader to your employees, a thought leader to your community, which means leaders focus on positivity. Leaders focus on solutions. Leaders focus on leading the way for other people, showing them the pathway to possibility. And I think oftentimes, so in my former career, before starting my business, I worked with business owners in the medical space for 10 years. I worked with private practice doctors, teaching them how to better engage their teams, how to increase their patient flow, how to increase their conversions with patients coming through the office, all of those things. And what I often found is business owners, especially in the medical space, they see themselves as a technician, maybe even as a manager, maybe if we're lucky here, maybe a little bit as a marketer, they own that wing, but they rarely see themselves as a leader leading the way for all of it, seeing themselves as a person who can positively impact change for the better for everyone that they come in contact with. A leader acts differently. A leader says, how can I be a role model? How can I be an example? How can I push through the discomfort, the annoyance I'm having today, the frustration, all the problems, the shutting down my practice, all these other things happening? The leader doesn't stew in that. They rise and focus on the positive. And I think this is really powerful when it comes to speaking, because when you share a message with other people, people want to be challenged, but they want to see possibility. And when you adopt a leadership mindset, you're constantly saying, how can I challenge and grow my audience, leading them towards where they want to go, not about stewing in the what's wrong and what's not working.
Right, right. What do you say to people who say, well, wait a minute, how can I be an authority leader when I'm just starting out? Or I have all these competitors in my industry that are already an authority leader. How can I compete with that?
Yeah, give yourself some grace. I think a lot of times we build up this thing in our head where it's a competition that we have to be on the varsity team for everything that we do. And the reality is that, no, you might not be the best marketer. You might not have the most market share. You might not have all of the systems and processes built out in your business. The truth is you might not have any of those things dialed in, and that's okay. But going back to it, you didn't just start your life yesterday. You didn't all of a sudden wake up today and say, oh my gosh, I don't have any skills whatsoever. I think what we have to start getting more comfortable with is seeing that the skills and experiences we've had throughout our lives and throughout our careers, they apply now. They apply to everything we do. And even though that we might not know exactly, tactically speaking, how to do the thing that's in front of us, we do know how to figure it out as we have done this far. So this is where I really focus on this idea of being an authority means that you have the confidence to figure things out. You have the confidence to know that you will find a way to do it and that you're not trying to pretend to be the best. You're just confident that you are the right person for the job. Because even if you just started your business yesterday, you have the skills, you have the passion. I know you have the heart, knowing that you will be a very good provider, a very good business to work with your clients. If you believe that, going back to belief number one, you don't have time to be focused on how your competition is marketing or how, I don't know, whatever other excuses we come up with. Those are all just distractions from why you're here, which is to grow your business, your team, and ultimately help your clients.
Yeah. Oh, some powerful words there. And you mentioned about figuring things out. One of my favorite quotes, as I'm sure you know, Marie Forleo, everything is figure outable. And
Yeah.
I get stuck in my life and I'm thinking, gosh, I don't know where to turn. I go back to that and say to myself, you know what? I'm going to figure it out. It's okay. Rome wasn't built in a day, as I mentioned to you, or we spoke about before. I'll just put my audience in. And you guys have heard me talk about this a little bit of sort of my vision of where I want to go. And I shared this with Heather that, I want to sit at that same poker table as Donald Miller, as Amy Porterfield, as Marie Forleo. I want to be a big player like that. But I have to realize that Rome wasn't built in a day, and there's going to be steps that I'm going to have to take to get there, and that's okay. So.
And it's
Anyway.
okay. And it's good, right? If you think about any of those people that you just mentioned, I'm sure they had a similar dream. Maybe some didn't, right? A lot of times you hear people who have quote unquote made it go, I wasn't going out to make it. I think all these people are ambitious people that had a bigger vision. I think they're living a bigger dream than they ever thought. But it all started with they had the audacity to say, I can do it. And they were also from the state of mind going, I know I'm not going to get I'm not going to get it perfect. And they probably went through the same cycles of imposter syndrome, self-doubt, all the things. I think the difference between where most business owners sit today, hoping that they get there, and the ones who are actually making progress, the difference is getting themselves out of the cycle of self-doubt faster. So it's not that they're not experiencing that. It's just they have risen, seen themselves as a leader, and believe that they're showing up with a message that matters, which overcomes the self-doubt quicker. So the more you can get yourself out of the cycle, the faster you can start making meaningful progress and help more people.
All about that mindset as we're talking about today.
Yeah.
So let's move on to number 3. And this one is one of my favorites. But I won't upstage you. Go ahead.
Number 3. I have to say, I mean, I made these, so all of them are my favorites. So I agree with you. So this one here, act as if you're already successful. Let me do that again. Number 3, act as if you're already successful, whatever your definition of success is. So what do I mean by this? Act as if you're already successful. Act as if you're already a big freaking deal. Act as if you're already running $1 million business, or you have thousands of clients, or whatever your dream is that you're chasing. You have to start acting as if you belong at that table. So I know that's one of the things we talked about. You mentioned that poker table, right? You have to start acting as if you belong right now. And this does 2 things. One, people are just naturally more drawn to confident people. People who are like, I belong here. I know my message matters. I know that how I'm showing up is of service. I am acting as if I belong. People are drawn to that. They buy into confidence. They want to follow confident people. But also, as you start acting as if you belong on the path of your dream, on that level of success that you're chasing, whatever that looks like, when you start acting that way, you start thinking that way. And when you start thinking that way, you are less drawn to nitpicking over problems and more focused on, like this is one I say a lot. As a $1 million business owner or a owner of a $10 million company, I am not either of those currently. How would I think or approach this problem differently? How would I show up to that podcast interview if I had the backing of a $10 million business? If I knew that I had created a $10 million business, how would I show up? Would I be desperate trying to get people to get my opt-in or trying to book an appointment? Or would I show up and serve and trust that I know my message and trust that the people who resonate with that message will follow my call to action and come learn more? There's a different mindset that happens both in your creative problem solving within business, but also your presence in your marketing. And when you start acting as if you belong or as if you've already made it, things just start happening more naturally. But I want to say the most important thing to discern here is I'm not saying that you should act egotistical and that you are the most wonderful, perfect, beautiful person in the room. That's not what I'm saying. I think there's a saying that I like to say, two things that have to go together for you to be very powerful and magnetic in your business to serve. And that's, you have to have confidence, but you also have to bring humility. Confidence and humility, those are the two superpowers that you bring that get people to want to listen and follow and work with you. But one without the other becomes destructive. Confidence without humility, you're just an egotistical person that they might be excited for a hot moment because they want your success, but quickly they realize they don't want to be like you, because people want to work with people who are out there to do good and help others. If you're too humble and you're always focused on giving credit away, people don't believe that you're actually confident and have a message that's going to help them. So you have to pair those two things, confidence with humility. And when you do that, you'll notice things start happening a lot quicker.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the challenges, and I can speak on this personally, I think as human beings, we're really drawn to looking at our past for where we can take our future. If your goal is to have a $10 million business, right? But you look at your past and you're like, wait a minute, I've never done that before. I can't do that. I'm looking at the results in my life that I've already created to propel me to where I want to go. But what you're saying is, no, we have to think like we have already gotten to that level in order to get our business, in order to get our goals or to reach our goals to that next level.
Yeah, I resonate with that so much, this idea of thinking about past versus present. I used to live in both of those a lot, and I still do. I'm a big fan of reflecting of what's happened to learn, but looking and dreaming about the future. But what I've realized, I got so excited about the future that I wasn't living in the present. And as a mom with 2 young kids at home, as someone who is a little addicted to their work, it became very easy for me to get swept up and caught in the vision and not experiencing life as I was creating it right in front of me. So I had to throw away. I used to have these little bracelets I wore on my wrist that said past, present, and future. I had to put away past and future, and now I only wear present, knowing that both of those other things are important, but the only thing that's most important is now. And I think applying this back to this idea of speaking or in your marketing, presence is the most powerful thing when you think about showing up to serve an audience. You have to paint the picture of the future, but honestly, the only thing that matters is that moment that you have with your audience right then. Doesn't matter what happened 10 minutes before. It doesn't matter about your credentials or experience, although pull those things up because they help. But what matters is the experience you're creating with an audience or a client or a customer right in that moment. You have to be more present. And to create that presence, you have to have everything we're talking about here: the confidence, the humility, the belief that you matter. All these things we're talking about, those things allow you to be present, and present people are the ones that build connections and ultimately create successful businesses.
Love it, love it. So we spoke about acting as if you were already successful, living in that future tense, but having that balance with presence as well, which is super important. I agree. What's number 4?
Number 4, this one I think is the most difficult for people to adopt. It's, you have to trust that your message will come out as it should. What do I mean by this? I think a lot of us, especially when we start thinking about doing marketing videos, we start thinking about maybe doing some live streams, maybe we do some seminars or some public speaking. People get so caught up of going, I want it to come out right. I want my message to be perfect, even though we all know it's not going to be perfect. We still have it in our minds. We have this really high bar. The way that we want to be perceived is exquisite. We want to be a luxury brand. We want people to be like moved when we speak. And then when we say something or stumble on our words, or like I just did, when we speak too quickly or we make mistakes, we are like, we did not live up to the delusional expectation we had in our head. I want you to embrace this idea that whatever you have to say is going to come out as it should. It's okay to be imperfect. It's actually better to be imperfect. In any of my presentations, I do not strive for perfection, because I find that perfection in speaking, if I do everything technically correct, it actually pushes my audience away, because that perfect thing is not relatable. one of my biggest strengths as a speaker is being relatable, being authentic, being real, laughing at my word flubs, talking too quickly and then making fun of it, using crazy examples, changing my story halfway through it. Like all the things that are technically not perfect is what makes me me and makes my audience go, if she doesn't have to be perfect, I don't have to be either. I just have to show up. So just trust that whatever snafu, whatever tech issue, whatever word flub, whatever disruption that happens, it's gonna go exactly as it should. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't prepare. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be practicing. I practice a lot. I practice speed skills with my voice, which sounds super geeky. I practice presentations. I practice Q&A. I've been talking with you a lot about word vomiting, which I'm happy to talk about. This idea is, how do we practice in private so we can show up present in the moment and just trust that however it comes out, it'll come out as it should. And even if it's imperfect, that actually will most likely be a benefit to connecting with your audience.
You know, this one really changed my life personally, because before this, and we were talking a little bit about this in your Facebook group, I would be very particular as to what I was saying on my solo podcast episodes. And what ended up happening, and I was just talking about this last week on my podcast, last week's episode, was that I was creating these mini blog posts in my outlines, and I felt like I was reading a little bit more than I was presenting, and I could start to hear it a little bit in my voice. And I had to realize, I came to this aha moment when you started teaching me how to do this word vomiting exercise, that, hey, it's okay if you don't come out perfect. And it's probably better that you don't come out perfect, because we're all human, and giving that false expectation is actually hindering that trust process in your marketing. So yeah, I think this is a really good one. Any advice you would give to people who, you know, one of the ways I feel like this manifests in video with my clients is they will create these pre-recorded videos. They'll get to sentence number 2, and they'll be like, oh, darn, I screwed up. I have to start all over again. Any advice for people who go through this process? Because it's me for sure.
I'm laughing so hard because I have to tell you. So I developed my old videographer at my old company. We used to do videos all the time, and I hated the pre-recorded videos because something about it, I would get up in my head and I had this delusion that it had to be so polished and perfect because we were a luxury brand. So I thought that luxury brand premium pricing meant that I had to have flawless execution. And let me just tell you right now, I have a luxury brand. My clients pay me between $10,000 and $25,000 to work with me privately on contracts. I have a luxury brand as a speaking coach. That is a very rare thing. But let me tell you, I'm wearing cutoff shorts right now and a tank top, and I'm using weird analogies about tunnels. And we just threw out a term called word vomit. Like, I keep it very real and very imperfect. Like, this idea of having this luxury brand, I am a luxury person. I drive luxury cars. I'm living in a very nice luxury house, but I'm keeping it real with my fake Peloton bike sitting in the other room where I use the Peloton app, but I'm not spending $5,000 on that bike. Are you kidding me? Like, bringing all this up because I think we have this picture in our mind that luxury or high-end means, oh my God, my least favorite marketing term is slick. I hate that term because it makes it sound like we all have to be so polished and perfect. And I hate brands that are that way. I won't follow them. Now, maybe this is just me personally and what I resonate with, but I think a lot of your listeners are going to resonate this too. We like real people who they have the elegant taste, but they don't mind drinking, the $9.99 bottle of red wine on the weekend. Like, bring out the nice bottle when it's relevant. I bring all this up because what happens is the picture. This is all about the picture we create in our mind, the identity that we've derived for ourselves. When we hit record, we're thinking of the the luxury, the perfection, the things. And then all of a sudden our demeanor changes. All of a sudden we use our video camera voice. All of a sudden we're trying to sound a certain way. And all of that is the opposite of how we actually normally sound. So what I want you to think about when it comes to pre-recorded video, Actually, let me tell you this. Some people might not be destined to start with pre-recorded video because in your mind, it's just going to make you turn into a crazy person and it might not be healthy for you. I was one of those people. I had to start with lives because I'm a little more long-winded. As you can tell, I like to be more organic and spontaneous in the moment. And the pre-recorded just wasn't a really strong match for me out of the gate. So if that's you, let go of the pre-recorded and try some Facebook Lives. You can always have your video editor or hire a video editor to help you edit those down to smaller videos that you can use. So permission, you don't have to do one or the other. Figure out which one jives for you. If it is pre-recorded video, two things to adopt. One, when I first started, I did not know how to edit video, nor did I know how to hire a video editor. So I'm like, I have to do it all in one take. So I would get to the second line, and then I realized I would develop a version of Tourette's with a lot of very colorful language, and I would have to restart. And what I noticed is the more I did of that, the more frustrated I got, so the worse my videos became. So I adopted this idea. I have two different ways to do it. It's very tactical for you. I adopt this idea that I would allow myself to word vomit. Let me just clarify. What that means is just allow yourself to start speaking out loud without any rules, without any intention, without any perfection. Just allow yourself to exercise that muscle between your mind and your mouth. Just start talking. It's like a warm up. If you're going to run a 5K race, you need to do some stretching and a warm up. Do that before you go live on a video. Don't try to recite a script. Just hit, what are your talking points? What am I talking about today? And the most important thing I would say is get clear, how will you start your video? Where most people screw up, where they fall off the rails and go, I messed up. They get their opening down, the intro, and then it's the transition from, okay, I've opened, now where I'm going. I always say crap happens in your transitions. That's where salespeople lose it. That's where presenters muck it up. That's where audiences lose attention. That's where filler words come in. It's always in the transitions. Transitions between topics, transitions between thoughts, transitions from your opening to your first point. The transitions is where the crap happens. So plan for that. Any scripting or planning I do is not about my content. I know my content. I know you guys know your content. Plan for how you're going to get from point A to point B. What is the singular sentence or the word that's going to be the connection? I want you to plan for the glue. Make your message come together. And when you do that, you notice when you go live, you're no longer freaking out going, how am I going to get out of this opening? Where am I going next? That's when you screw up. So plan for the moments, create glue for your presentation from your opening to your first point, from your first point to your second point, and then how the heck are you going to close it? When you plan for that, you'll notice you'll take some pressure off of yourself and you'll be more successful when you hit record.
Oh, some great advice you just threw out there. And guys and gals listening, I have to tell you, this word vomiting exercise, this is one of the techniques that completely change how I show up in my marketing in as little as 4 weeks of working with Heather. I do it in the shower. I don't know if that's TMI, but
it's real though, right? And I just love, I thought when I came up with this thing of word vomiting, which by the way, I've been doing for years. I mean, since I was probably 16 years old, that's how long I've been word vomiting. I didn't know what to call it at the time. And I'd always just called that to myself. And when people started asking me about it and I started teaching it, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to come up with a better name for it. And then I thought, nope, that's what it is. I want you to get real that it's not supposed to come out pretty. So I call it the word vomit. It's just the idea is most of us think our thoughts in our heads, not out loud. And then when we go to say them out loud, we wonder why they don't sound so great. Just practice speaking out loud. It will make a huge difference.
Absolutely. And I'm right there with you regarding the wine. I mean, I only break out the $25 Sancerre with company. Other
Yep. You could be fancy. You could also be scrappy. I'm a big believer that you have to be both, especially when you are in marketing or doing marketing in your business. You have to be able to toggle between the two, but I get scrappy all the time.
Yeah. So I could talk about this all afternoon, but I know we have one more to get to, and that's number 5.
Yeah, this is the one that's going to be the lesson in everything that you do in business. And I know your audience knows this very well. But belief number 5 is you have to show up even when it gets hard. Actually, especially when it gets hard. This is how you created your business. This is how you've grown your business. This is why you're still in business. In the last few months, we're still in a pandemic right now. This is proof of it. Anybody running a business right now, they are showing up when it gets hard. Let me correct that. Some people aren't showing up. And
Sure.
some businesses haven't made it, but you're still here if you're listening. So, what I want you to think about is when it comes to speaking, when it comes to showing up for your marketing, just expect it's going to be hard. That's not an excuse to not show up, because what I found when it comes to this world of marketing, marketing online, doing video, doing social media marketing, showing up is a requirement. It's not optional. So if you're having a bad week or a busy month, that's not an excuse to not be posting on social. It's not an excuse to not be posting on your Instagram stories. Your audience, you start building a level of expectancy. That consistency creates trust. And when you break it because, oh, it's getting hard, or, oh, not enough people are watching my lives, or, oh man, whatever excuse we come up with, right? We got too busy, so we couldn't record the podcast this week, or whatever else. Like, you have to show up, especially when it gets hard, because that's the difference between the people still wishing they were at the poker table and the people actually playing poker. Going back to your example you used earlier. But that's the thing. That's the thing that makes the people who keep thriving in business, who keep growing, who keep adapting to all the changes going on in marketing and in the world, are the people who continue to show up, especially when it's hard. Just expect it. That'll make your life so much easier.
So, one of my listeners, her name is Diane, and she had confided with me in an Instagram DM that one of the reasons it's challenging for her to show up in her marketing is because she is an introvert. So I gave her some tips and suggestions on one of my podcast episodes. I actually don't remember the episode number right now, but I'll link to it in the show notes if you're interested in listening to it. But I'm curious, what are some of the tips and strategies you would suggest to other people who feel that they're introverted and that is what is holding them back from showing up in their marketing?
This is such a good question. First of all, kudos to Diane for having the courage to actually send you that. A lot of people hide in their, not, I don't want to say excuses is a bad thing, but we all have our excuses for things, our reasons why we can't do something. So just the fact that she's voicing it shows that she has a desire to do it. She really wants to know, how do I navigate this? So the thing that surprises most people to learn is that I'm an introvert. I am not an extroverted person. I can turn it on when I need to, when I'm in front of a crowd. I find that this is one of my favorite quotes that I say all the time, and it's mine. It's that some people are called into, or some people are attracted to the spotlight, meaning that they love being in the spotlight. They love telling the stories. They love all the things. They love the attention that comes with it, and they want to be on the stage, whatever that looks like. But others are called into it. And this is something that I really feel strongly about myself. I do feel comfortable in the spotlight, but it wasn't always that way. For me, it started, I won't go into the whole story, but it started for me when I was a teenager and my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And we were forced to fight something that was, no teenager should have to be involved in these conversations, but we were forced to understand a disease and how it was attacking my mom, and it was terminal at the time. We were forced to, how do we figure this out? Well, there was not a lot of information for the kinds of treatments that she wanted to get. Conventional treatments were something that weren't going to work for her. They hadn't been working. Her cancer had come back. So we started exploring other ways to treat her cancer, holistic and alternative therapies, and there was nothing there. So my family started researching it more. And we found that there wasn't a lot of information that was trusted available on the internet in 1999, 2000. So we started finding it. And we realized that, hell, if we're going through this, other families probably are too. So we started a nonprofit organization and named it after my mom. And the whole purpose was to provide education for women going through the same cancer she was going through, who wanted to have options. And I bring all this up because at the time, nobody was talking about holistic medicine, alternative treatments, this idea of using holistic medicine and conventional medicine together. They were two separate things that were very controversial, not complementary. And we knew that they could work together well, as it did for my mom. So I was called into this position to become a voice for organizations at 18 years old. I became the spokesperson. I had to travel around to different organizations and ask for money. I had to speak on stages to educate women about cancer. I had to go into hospitals and talk to women who were dealing with the same cancer as my mom, even after my mom died. I was called into this work, very, very emotional. It was very deep. And all of it was because I knew there was a reason for why I was talking. So Diane, if you're listening, your story might not be like that. You might not have this big significant life event that happened to you with this big organization that you're trying to build to save people's lives. It's a pretty extreme example, but what I would say is if you go back to belief number one and believe that what you have to say matters, thinking about me right now, I know helping people find their voice and using it to help impact the lives of other people, that is what I do now. And does it save people lives? Probably not. Maybe it does. Maybe a message that somebody communicates is something that changes someone's lives or saves someone's lives. But I know that what I talk about now is important. And Diane, for you to get out of your introversion, you have to deeply believe in what we talked about today at its core. You have to know that if you don't speak up, who will? And what happens if somebody hears somebody who does not have the expertise or experience or the care that you do? What if they get that message from them? What if they get it from somebody who's in it more for the money versus for the cause? What if they get this information from a bad source and they make a bad decision for themselves? What if then? If you start developing your why at a deeper level and say, it is a necessity for me to connect with my people because they need to hear it and are waiting for me, I find that you get over that introversion piece pretty quickly because you're not doing it for you, you're doing it for the other people. So what I would say for anybody who is hesitating and has fear of the camera or whatever that looks like, the best way to get over your fear is to elevate your reason. So get clear on your reason of who needs to hear your message, and you will push your fear to the side for them.
Wow, what a powerful, powerful story that was, and a great way to sort of connect all of those 5 beliefs together. Can you say that quote one more time?
Some people are attracted to the spotlight. Others are called into it. And I believe not one is better than the other, but you have to recognize where you fall so you know which strings to pull in yourself to get over your fear to continue to show up even when it gets hard.
Let that sink in to everyone that's listening right now. Well, Heather, you have given so much valuable insight here. Can you tell my listeners where they can find more about you?
Yeah. So my favorite place to hang out, as Milan knows, is on Instagram. So you can come hang out with me. I would love to know what message resonated with you most today. If there was one of these beliefs that you were grappling with that just kind of clicked for you. So send me a direct message. I'm over there at the Heather Sager. That's Sager. So you can hang out over there. And, if anybody's listening and they're thinking about, hey, how do I get more into this video thing? Still wondering, okay, so what does this look like? I'm not even quite sure. I don't really consider myself as a speaker, but I get what you're saying. I hadn't even told you this yet. I just finished up with my team a brand new mini training that I am publishing by the time this episode goes live. And it's essentially the 3 strategies that you can use to accelerate your online business using speaking here this year during the pandemic and what's happening right now. So it's just a mini training. It's about 40 minutes long. If you'd like to get your hands on it, it's totally free for you. There's no pitch at the end. It's just a completely free training for people who want to get their voices out there and start getting more comfortable on different kinds of virtual stages this year. So you can grab that over at heathersager.com/mini training. And Milan, I'll give you the links to those. So if you want to pop them in the show notes.
Perfect. Absolutely will do. And guys and gals, Heather Sager, she is the real deal. I hope you all enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Heather, thank you so much for your time, your insights, and your inspiration. I know people are going to walk away from this episode feeling excited.
I sure hope so. I'm excited to see what comes from it. So thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thanks again. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right. Did I not disappoint? Wasn't that an amazing discussion? Oh, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Well, that being said, I just want to thank you so much for joining me this week. Remember, you can always reach me on Instagram. My handle is @MilanMarketingandMedia, or you can send me an email at podcast@milanmarketingmedia.com. Thanks again for joining me. I will see you next week, same time, same place. Until then, cheers.